There was a question, actually the same question from two people, when I was talking about the honeypot. So remember we were discussing that we wanted to rename administrator and then create a new administrator account. And the question was, well, this doesn't do any good because it doesn't change the SID. We have to consider all different attacks. Not everyone in your organization understands that administrator ends in 500. I would say that as I tour the world, not all administrators know it ends in 500. So we're not just taking a configuration and saying it protects completely. Actually, it doesn't protect at all. Rename administrator isn't the protection. It has nothing to do with protection. It's not a security setting. It's a honeypot. It's giving you insight to an attack. That's all that setting is doing. So the setting wasn't a security setting. The setting was a setting to open up to you if you are under attack. And it does a very good job of that, okay? So yes, any user in your environment, whether it be PowerShell or LDP or one of who knows how many other LDAP tools, can easily get a listing of the accounts in their SIDs, because that's read access in Active Directory. That wasn't the point of that configuration. But it's a good question and something we definitely need to talk about, okay? All right, so moving on, not completely away from security, because we will touch a little bit on security as we go through, but talking about automation. The ideas of automation are something that we need to consider, but we also need to consider where we want to use them, because with automation, which all of us in here have discovered usually in a negative way, sometimes automation doesn't do what we want it to do. We think it's going to do this, but unfortunately it did this, and this was a big problem. And now we have to fix this. So what I want to do is I want to walk you through, especially with user provisioning, a concept around automation that is going to eliminate some of the negative things that can go on with most automations, okay? So I'm gonna walk you through a process, and it's going to be a step-by-step process, and in the end, all of those steps go together into one package, okay? So with regard to this idea of automation with users, we need to consider some technologies that maybe you hadn't considered before. And maybe the reason you hadn't considered them before is they're not available from Microsoft. Even in the illustrious PowerShell, okay? PowerShell, as I told you before, was not created to administer Active Directory. It was an afterthought, a long time afterthought, to add Active Directory commands into PowerShell. But there is an initiative at Microsoft. And the initiative is that every single radio button, checkbox, fill in the blank box, if there is a GUI configuration for it, there needs to be a PowerShell command for it. I think where Microsoft is going is actually pretty awesome, which they are going to, in essence, put PowerShell behind every single configuration. Every single configuration can be PowerShell. That actually has some benefits, especially if I'm in a graphical interface and I right-click and it tells me the PowerShell command. Now I don't have to scour the internet trying to find out what it is. Now I can not reverse engineer, but I can take advantage of the interface, what PowerShell is configuring, and if it's something that I do often, now I potentially could automate that. So there is some benefit to that. Does that exist today? No chance. Is it going to exist in the next year? No chance. 5 years? I don't think so. I wouldn't say no chance. I just don't see it anywhere in any interface today. okay? So we really have to consider this. Now what I'm going to do is I want to walk you through the basics and then get into some more difficult things. Let's just talk about basic user creation. And when I talk about basic user creation, we have to talk about it in the Microsoft way first. So here we have the Microsoft Administrative Tool. This tool's been around forever, right? This is the tool that most of us use. If you have, the latest and greatest server, you definitely have a different interface, but it gives you the same functionality. And what's that functionality? Well, I can go and create a new user. Now, if you are still using this method, I want to point you to some things that maybe you haven't thought of, maybe you have, and maybe you've just convinced yourself, that's not that big a deal. But it is a big deal, okay? First of all, it's Monday morning, you get to work, and you have an email. In the email, it says that you are hiring 20 new employees that are starting at 10 a.m. that morning. So what do you have to do? You have to go in here. How many times? I'm thinking 20 to create this. Does anyone think that's efficient? Okay, good. We're on the same page at least with the basics. And it gets worse, right? So let's say that the first user is Hank. So you put in Hank. And over here, you put in Hank's name. And then you have to put in a password. Of course, if you type it the same, it helps. User must change your password. Next. But were you really finished? Are you even close to being finished? No. But according to Microsoft, because this tool was created when? In what year? 1999. Have things changed in the last 18 years? Not according to Microsoft. They give you the same crummy tool, okay? So now I finish, and now I get the opportunity. Notice how I turned it over to a positive? Now I get the opportunity to go through all of these tabs. But are actually all the tabs here? No. Okay? Are we on the same page here? This is not efficient. This is nowhere near efficient. So we do have some stumbling blocks that we need to overcome. There are some things that we need to consider along the way. So what I'm going to suggest is that maybe we take a different approach even to basic user creation. So when it comes to user creation, create a single user, I really think we should have everything here at the onset of the user creation. We shouldn't have to create the user and then go into its properties. Let's actually just do everything we're supposed to do right here. It's going to save you time. Now, another thing, and this is probably going to be the highlight of your day, all right? So those of you that didn't drink coffee, which I know all of you did because, well, I'm in Europe and that's the way we do it, right? Pay attention to this because this is the most important part. We have put into this tool a technology that is revolutionary, all right? Now, you notice that my user was Hank. Now watch what happens with one button. Are you ready? It goes fast, so be careful. Did you see that? It's called autofill. The reason I say it's revolutionary technology is Microsoft hasn't come up with it yet, right? Now how big of an issue is this for you? Now think about it. Really think about it. Do you have other employees that create users and for some reason they can't type the same name the same multiple times? Ring a bell? Happens all the time. Is this really revolutionary? No, but is it important? I think so. Why should we use humans typing and typing incorrectly when all we have to do is automatically fill in the other things that should be automatically filled in? Because when someone mistypes something and they end up creating the user, what are our options to fix it? Well, right-click, delete, recreate. Well, that just means you're manually doing the process over again. In some instances, we can't make the change, right? So we have to inform the user, yes, I know your name is Hank, but for now you're Hark. Sorry, that's your logon name. It's a new naming convention we have in the organization. And some of you have done that. Okay? So even at the basics, we need something that is going to help us. But it goes beyond this. In my opinion, it actually goes into some pretty important stuff, such as security. So when I create a new user, because I have 10 or 20 users I have to create. So I want to go through this. I got to get to some other stuff. But I'm going through this as fast as I can. It's 8 in the morning. I got other things to do. But I go in here, I create my user, and I come to this. Is there anything missing from here that you would really like to have? Auto-generate. Now, how complex is that? It's not here, so it must be extremely complex to automatically generate a password that's unique. And that's really what we want, right? We want the uniqueness. Because if I am responsible for creating 20 users, what password am I going to put in here for all 20 users? The same. Do you have to? No. But is it convenient to put in different ones? No. Because that means you are responsible for writing it down and then individually making sure that the right user gets the right password, correct? And I'm going to guess not many of you do that. So we have this issue that Microsoft doesn't give us a solution for this. Does Microsoft have a solution for this? Have you tried it in PowerShell? Has anyone tried it in PowerShell? Did you get it to work?
In a fashion, yes.
In a fashion. Now, translation, what does that really mean? Does it work or not?
It does provide a randomized password, but the combinations are in general so complex that the users can't type them, so they have to call anyway.
Okay.
So you can just as well say, we don't give you a password, call us when you need it.
So what's interesting is I actually went through about 6 months ago, and I tried to find a posting that actually detailed how to do it correctly and it worked, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it, which indicated to me this is really not possible. So you found a way to do it, which is fantastic, but if any of you try to go find it, I would actually get his email and ask him how he did it before you leave, because you're on your own to try to figure it out otherwise. Because I really tried, I wanted to do it. I was going to demonstrate it. I couldn't find a way to actually get it to work using PowerShell, okay? So instead of going through that pain, but also getting the power of a randomized password, how about if we just use a tool that has a button, random password? That sounds a little bit easier to me. Because this is important. Randomizing the password is extremely important. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back around this in our next section when we talk about AD cleanup. But at the onset of user creation, you need random passwords. You need to be able to put the user in the right groups, right? I mean, isn't that one of the most important configurations? because you're giving access to resources based on group membership. And according to Microsoft, group membership isn't important because you create the user and they're not in any groups. You have to go back in and reconfigure that after you've created the account. So when it comes to user creation, we want to have all-encompassing configuration. We want to be able to go into one tool, create all of these configurations, terminal services. We can configure Exchange, remote mailboxes. Everything is done here because this is the way it should be. So when we get to the basics of this, we need to have tools. Now, do any of you have an issue that you have so many users, you have employees that have the same name? And of course, if you use this tool takes care of that, correct? No. Does it even take care of it a little bit? No. More inefficiency, all right? How about PowerShell? Does PowerShell take care of it? Is there an automatic switch you put in that says, take care of duplicate names? Could you architect that so PowerShell comes up with the variations? Of course you can. You could probably create an entire operating system out of PowerShell. It's that powerful. I don't disagree. But while you're trying to figure that out, I'm going to suggest you simply come into a tool that has already considered that. So when I go in and I create my users, I want to have the ability, to have, where's my option? Somewhere. Yes? Oh, thank you. I knew it was in there somewhere. All right. So over here, we can do it with all the names. Duplication controls. So when you put in the basics, you don't want to have to discover if it's a duplicate because you get the pop-up. You just want to be able to handle duplications, and you get to customize the duplication name with whatever formatting you use, because you use a formatting today. And the formatting should be able to handle not just one duplication, but numerous duplications. Script that in PowerShell, okay? You can. I wouldn't want to have to figure that out. But these are things that we need to consider. Now, with regard to this whole idea of user creation, it's not just the basic, right? It's not just user creation, it's everything. So here is a process that I want you to consider. Because none of you really want to have individual user creation. I know none of you want to create everything from scratch every time. So imagine, just think for a minute, what if you could take a file that has first name, last name, and a delimiter, maybe template name. And you take that information and you have templates for each type of user that you create. Maybe HR, maybe finance, maybe IT, maybe exec, it doesn't matter. You have a template for every type of user. The type is defined in the CSV file. And what you do is you bring in the CSV file, the template applies all the settings, and with the single click, you're done. And it's all correct. Sound good so far? But we really need one more step, because how many of you feel as domain admins, it's really your responsibility to create users? Your time is a little bit more valuable than that, right? How about if we can delegate that to someone else? Do you trust someone to just create users in AD? I don't, right? I'm an old style domain admin. I don't trust anyone touching my domain controllers to adding things in. But however, what if I delegate to someone and when they hit create user, Workflow sends me an email saying someone wants to create this and I get final approval? That sounds pretty good. All of this is possible. This is what I want you to think about. And I know you haven't thought about this. You know why? Microsoft doesn't have a solution for this unless you buy some high-end product. Because PowerShell can't do this. PowerShell can't do workflow. So let's walk through the different components. We've already talked about user creation and making that efficient, but I don't want you to create users individually. What I want you to do is do bulk user import. If we really try to push the envelope and we really try to do things the Microsoft way, can someone show me bulk user import in Active Directory users and computers? Doesn't exist. PowerShell, fantastic. Let's do it the PowerShell way. So, do we use this PowerShell? No, that's the wrong one. We have to go to our Active Directory module for PowerShell. And what's our command that we type to get information? Get help user. So you will see here, new AD user. All right? So if I do get help new AD user, all I have to do simple. Right? I mean, you see it, right? I mean, it's kind of like looking at the Matrix and just seeing everything. It's unbelievable. I don't know what I guess this is a PO box. I don't know. I have no idea what a nullable bool is. I have no idea. Now, how many of you, we're going to be honest, right? We've been together a little bit. We can be honest with one another. How many of you have used PowerShell to create a user? Okay, the first time you did it, how long did it take you to do it correctly with properties? It's not just creating the user, it's actually having properties. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes? Took you a while, right?
Did it for 200 users, but it took me a day.
It took you a day.
Yeah.
That's an honest man, look at that. Right? It's a programming language, right? Is syntax important? Not only is syntax important, typing the right thing is important. It's why I don't program. I am a horrible typer. I can type fast, but it may not be correct. I've written 16 books. If it weren't for editors, you wouldn't know what's on the page, right? It's a programming language. But we aren't here to create a user, right? Remember where we are. We are at bulk user creation. So, now we go back. One user a day. Now we get to do bulk. Now, in PowerShell,
Actually, that was bulk.
that was bulk,
Yeah.
okay. But to figure it out took a while, didn't it?
Yeah, it took me a day.
Yeah, okay. In PowerShell, here's another tip for those of you that don't use PowerShell much, right? If you do get help, the command, new AD user, and then put in examples, nearly every PowerShell command, according to the structure of PowerShell commands, has examples. Perfect. And they're there. Number one, creates a new Active Directory user, says create a new user with a certificate imported from a file. How many have ever done that? Pretty good example, huh? Completely worthless. Example 2, create a new user, set the title and mail properties. That seems reasonable, right? Number 3, create a new iNet.org person. How many's ever done that? We have one example that's worth anything. Where's bulk user import? I would think that if this was the tool, it would have good examples. It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. So, I think, nope, I didn't put it in here. It's not in this one. I actually, in another slide deck, I went out to Microsoft and I did all the heavy lifting for you, and I took directly from Microsoft's web page the sample for bulk user import. It's about this long. I'm sure all you have to do is copy and paste it. It'll work in your environment. No, you got some time ahead of you trying to figure this out. Where does the complexity come in? Okay, where do I store the CSV file? What's the structure of the CSV file? Because you got to know what's there, right? Do you think that's going to help? Do you think Microsoft's just going to automatically tell you, oh, if you need this, do this, this, and this? No, you get to go research it. Then you get to trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. What if you have duplicate names? How do you cover duplicate names using PowerShell?
I did not.
You did not. But it's important. All of you said you have duplicate names. Now, let's think about this just for a minute. If we figure out PowerShell to do bulk user import, right? We go back to here. New AD user. Right? So we're doing this. So we have our PowerShell command that is going to go suck out information out of a CSV file. And when it hits a duplicate, how do you know? How do you know? So what do you have to do now if you use PowerShell? You get to manually go into AD and double check if every single one of those were created. Well, of course, you could create some kind of a trap in PowerShell that said if I get an error, then send out this information. But this is just requiring things. I don't want you to have to do that. What I want you to do is I want you to use a tool that's designed to do this. AD Manager Plus, difficult, you click on the bulk users. And if you don't know what to do, you go to sample CSV file. And we actually give you a sample CSV file with details, right? It's all right here. It's not just first name, last name. We're giving you some, and you can, of course, take out whatever. But what if you want to put in additional attributes? Because this is really what took a lot of your time, right? Getting the syntax for the additional attributes?
Yeah, and the formatting.
And the formatting. How about this? How about if I just give you a listing of all the stuff? Configuration doesn't have to be complicated. You just have to take the time to actually provide information that's worth something to the administrator that's in one spot. This is a click away. Now, what's interesting, and this is an absolute true story, I still to this day get emails regarding AD Manager because administrators will go into AD Manager and they will, for example, look at this input and they'll say, display name, I type in display name in the CSV and it doesn't work. Well, guess what? It's not display name, right? It's an LDAP attribute name. That's where the difficulty comes in, is trying to track all of that back, and then you have to test it and regression test it. That's why this is so important, because we've done the heavy lifting for you. We've given you the secret decoder, so you can just quickly go through. Are you still going to have to test? I would, right? You got to make sure that the input is equaling what you want in the output. But these templates are extremely powerful, right? So create bulk users, import, and then choose a file. So I'm not forcing you to have it in a particular place like PowerShell is going to force you to do it. I'm giving you the flexibility so you can go and choose the file. It could be out on the network, it could be on your local machine, wherever the file is. We'll come back to that. So mine are here. Now, I have 3 in here. You'll notice it's doing some configurations. It's, I think, putting users in groups, if I'm correct, right? So I'm doing all of this all through the template. The template is doing this for me. You will notice that, let's see, it looks like all of these are finance, so I do have another one that has different ones. So I have different templates that if the user has a different template name, it's giving it different group membership. Okay? But the bulk user import is taking the information from the file, parsing it, giving it the correct LDAP attribute, but what is it doing here? What is this step? Has it created the user yet? No, this is giving me a verification step. Does PowerShell do that? Does PowerShell all of a sudden bring in the users and say, wait, before I create these users, I want to make sure that you type things correctly? Does it do that? No, doesn't do it.
But in this, how do you know which...
Okay, so the question is, how do I know which kind of user each of them are? So what I have done, let me pull up one of my, I have a bunch of different things here.
Finance or engineer or something.
So right here, you will see that I have given name, member of, and template name. The template name is the delineator. The template name matches the template, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, that I've created in AD Manager. So there is an entry in the CSV which guides it into how it's going to be configured. Super simple. Okay? It has to be simple because it's complex on the other end. But when you type it manually using Active Directory users and computers one at a time, errors are created. When you use PowerShell and you're using a CSV, you really don't know if it was typed correctly because someone had to type it in. It had to get it from somewhere. So it just creates it, and it's up to you to figure it out. What I'm saying is you need a tool that allows you to verify before you hit OK. I don't want you to do things twice when you can do it once, right? I don't know if it translates, but there's a very common saying in the US. Measure how many times? Twice. How many times do you cut? Once. Measure twice, cut once. Don't measure, cut, measure, cut, measure, cut. You're going through a lot of extra wood. So this is the second piece. This is where we get to measure twice before we actually create the account. Now, I want you to consider if you're going to use PowerShell and you're going to place the object in an OU and you're creating 10 users. In order to verify that, what do you have to do to verify that the user is created correctly? I'm thinking you have to go to 10 OUs. How do you know which OU it was? Well, now you're going to have to open up the CSV file that PowerShell used, and you're going to have to backward engineer all of that to go verify all of that. That is time consuming. Do it here. And don't just, when you get to this point, say, yes, go. Look at the information. Make sure it's correct. Make sure the name is correct. So this whole idea of bulk user creation has a lot of moving parts to it. It can be done in PowerShell. I'm just saying there's a lot of gotchas with it that can make things more complicated for you. And if you're truly going to verify before you give the user the information, then you're going to have to go through and find all those user accounts that PowerShell created and double check them. Now, user creation templates, probably one of the most powerful aspects of AD Manager Plus because of the ability to configure everything. Now, if we go the Microsoft way, and based on some earlier conversations, I know you guys have been around the block a little bit with AD. Do I have templates in here? What's the best thing that I got to a template?
Copy user.
Copy user. So, possibly, you have a finance template, right? Or another user. And in this finance template, you go through and you configure everything that you would think a normal finance user would have. How well does that work for you? How many other configurations do you have to make if you use one of these? Right? But this isn't normally how it goes, is it? This is normally what happens. You get an email or you get a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper it has first name, last name, department, whatever, and then there's an entry on the new user creation form that says create similar to this user, and there's a username listed, correct? So you go to that user, you right-click and say copy, and then you put on the new information. Does that work for you today? Does that create problems? For example, the person filling out the form, do they have any clue really what they're doing? Nope. Do they have any clue what that user they put in the copy to has group membership in? So you just duplicated it. Do you verify it? Do you verify it? No. And we wonder why people have privileges they shouldn't have. Microsoft has forced us into this because they don't have templates. They don't have templates. Can you guys show me templates in here? Quiet all of a sudden. Where are my PowerShell users? Show me templates for users in PowerShell. They don't exist. It's the most important piece. The most important piece doesn't exist? I'm confused. Why would we use a tool that doesn't even include the most important piece? Because what I want you to have is I want you to have a solution that actually I have many templates. And to call the template, I just have it as an entry in the CSV. Done. What's included in the template? Everything. Everything. So now, when you take a CSV and you import it, whichever template you point to, all the properties are done. Are they done the same every single time? Yeah, because it's in the template. How difficult is it to create a new template if you need to tweak a setting? Not difficult at all. You simply come in here and I can copy templates. So it takes all the settings and I just tweak the one setting. So what we are doing is we're creating an efficient model for you that you can put the process together. And ideally, this is our goal, right? What is the goal? Where are we heading to? Where we're heading to is at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're not even at work, hopefully, you're not even at work, a process generates a CSV file. That CSV file at 4 a.m. is imported into AD Manager Plus. AD Manager Plus takes the templates and it puts all the attributes in for all of those users. But does it create the user? Do we want it to? Do you want some automated process to actually modify AD? No, what would you rather have when you get to work at 8 o'clock? How about an email saying, by the way, at 4 o'clock, there was a request to create 20 new users. Would you like to review them before they're created? Yes, that would be wonderful. So take the process you have now 8 o'clock, you get a list of 20, you go through 80 users and computers and you manually create, then you modify, you manually create, then you modify all 20. Or at 8 o'clock, you come in and review an email and you create users. It's extremely efficient. You are verifying before any of that occurs that those users are correct. This is the workflow process. This is this piece. So, how is this generated? How is the CSV file generated? I don't know. How do you get a list of users today? Could you just generate the CSV from maybe an HR program? Possible. Is it in an HR program? If not, it maybe have to manually be generated. But it was manually generated for you. All you have to do is put it into a format that AD Manager Plus can use. You're already doing that step in some way. I'm just saying get it into the right location so that AD Manager Plus can bring it in. But it's not going to create the user for you. It's going to email you telling you, hey, by the way, there are some users that need to be generated. And in AD Manager Plus, we have all of the critical components of workflow. I was actually talking with someone just the other day, and in their environment, this is not going to be for everybody, the administrator, because of workflow, said, why wouldn't I want to give everyone Requester? Because I don't know who's going to create users. It might be a manager. It might be someone in HR. It may be a secretary. Who knows who it is? Why not give everybody the ability to request? Because you, the admin, you're going to be able to deny if you want to deny. The whole purpose is to make sure that all of the process piece is easy. All the process piece of configuring all of those attributes is 100% automated. We want the automation piece. We want to make sure that that piece is smooth. So inside of AD Manager Plus, we have workflow. In this whole idea of workflow, you get to determine who the requesters are. You get to determine who the reviewers are, who the approvers are. You just go in and you clarify who is going to get which email from which component. The email shows up and you take action. So when you get to work at 8 in the morning, it's just sitting there waiting for you. And again, all the details in that process have already been taken care of. When you receive the email in that workflow, all the work has been done. You just verify. You verify with an approve button, and that's all you do. Let's see what I have in here for all requests. That's actually a little different. Ooh, that's a good one. We'll talk about that one. I don't know if I have. Okay, here's a request. Waiting for users to be created. I can view the objects to make sure the object information is correct. This one is a little odd. I don't know when this, I was goofing around with something. Obviously, they've been sitting here for a while too. This is from the exact same thing. So I was messing around with something, testing. But these are what it's going to come through. It's going to come through, it's going to tell you how many, and when you do that bulk user import, it's going to show the number of users, and it's going to give you the ability to verify, just like I showed you when you do the bulk manually. But I don't want you to do the bulk manually. I don't want you to do anything manually. The only thing manual is the execute to create those users. It's the only piece that I want you to be involved with.
Why? Why doesn't Falcon update that too?
Okay, so the question is, why not just automatically create users? In here, again, we're amongst friends. How many of you have used PowerShell to create or modify users, and you just let it do it, but in the end result, it wasn't what you wanted. How long did it take you to recover from that?
Not many minutes, but flow as a flow.
Okay? Anyone else do it and it was an issue? Because let me give you an example, because I've seen it. Someone told me this example. I was actually in Tucson, Arizona at a CIO summit, and I was talking about PowerShell and AD Manager, and the CIO said, no, my administrators tell me PowerShell can do this. And I said, okay, great. And then he goes, but wait a minute. He goes, for some reason we were modifying 400 user accounts emails, and they made a mistake, and those users didn't have email. I go, how long did it take you to recover? 4 days. Because they had to find all 400 users. Because it didn't list the users. It was a query to find the users. So they had to go in and get a list of all those users and then manually update them. That's why. Why would I have a system do something for me where the system can make errors?
Then you have a wrong error in your process when you don't test your skills.
Well, but it's not just about testing, right? I mean, some names are a little more complicated than the operating system can't handle it. Hyphenated names, juniors, seniors. Someone may have two names. The person inputting it may not know, right?
But you know.
Yeah, but if the system creates it automatically, then it's too late.
But if you have 15,000 users, like I have, if you don't know every user, if they're senior or junior, I don't think you can make this right decision but just by looking at the data about the user.
Sure you can, because it's going to come into the system and it's not going to be the right format. It's telling you what it's going to create. And if it's going to create it wrong, you stop it before it creates it wrong. That's what I'm saying. You have the ability to make sure that correct information goes into AD, not incorrect information. Because when a process takes information, it can't make decisions on the fly. It can only take what it's given. And if I'm pulling information out of the HR system, it may pull information out of the HR system incorrect based on what it needs to be inside of AD. I had someone just last week at Ignite saying that he had an HR system that was creating users in HR, the HR system, and then spitting them out into AD Manager Plus. But his HR system was creating them wrong. So he'd hit, or he or someone else in HR, of course, if it's wrong, what do? Redo. So now they had two users in the HR system. And then they were getting duplicate names in AD. So now they had 2 and 2, because someone just kept hitting redo trying to fix the problem. That is an automated process. And what I'm saying is that's not the way we need to function. We do need some human interaction to make sure it's correct. Measure twice, create the user once. Because if you let the automation occur, I guarantee you, you're going to have to do, you measured once, you let it do it, but now you're going to have to delete and recreate and modify. And you have to discover that. And the discovery could actually be pretty difficult. Because again, what's going to happen is you think it's created properly. So you communicate the information. Right? Now we get into the process of how you educate your users on how to log on for the first time, right? So you have to educate the user. Oh, no, it's your first name dot last name. First name dot last name password, didn't work. First name dot last name, doesn't work. You're not training the end user, some tech is, right? Or the user just has a piece of paper that has their information on it. And if it doesn't work, what's going to happen? Someone's getting a phone call. You have to drop what you're doing and you have to go find what the problem was. It was created 3 days ago. You have no clue where it is. You do your search, you go through, and now you have to try to walk through that. Just do it the first time. You know if it's going to be correct or not. You can see it. Because today you manually type it to be correct, and you do all of those changes along the way to make sure those accounts are correct. Okay? Office 365 and Google. Today, how do you provision Office 365 accounts? PowerShell, right? That's right. You guys don't have to be quiet, you PowerShell users. It's okay, you can say PowerShell. How do you assign licenses?
We do assignment of licenses through group membership.
Okay, so you've had a workaround for it.
Yep.
Because that is a workaround. Would I be correct in saying that? Okay. Because PowerShell doesn't have the solution, does it?
Well, actually, no.
No.
But
Okay.
we are doing it in PowerShell.
Okay, but native PowerShell can't do it. You've created a workaround for it. Okay? I would much rather you take a little bit easier approach with this. And when you create your templates, how about you hit a button that says, oh, Office 365. And with Office 365, you come in here and say, for that template, just assign those licenses. It seems a little easier to me. Okay? Because I don't want to have to modify the script every time that I have a new template, right? That's the problem with scripting, is it's not just one place. You have to go to a variety of places. You have to verify. You have to make sure the syntax is right. So now you have to create additional users to make sure your updates actually work. And here it's a button. These are things that we're familiar with. We've been dealing with graphical interfaces all of our career. Yes, it's nice to have an interface to script and automate things, but I don't think this is the area to do it. We want to be able to see what is going to occur. We want the back end to automatically handle any name differences, any LDAP differences, any name differences in Office 365 for that particular attribute or property. We want that handled. So now, through AD Manager Plus, you can incorporate the provisioning of users in Office 365 and their licenses when you create the users in AD. It automatically just flows. So with literally one click, you can also do the same thing with Google. Again, all you need to do inside of AD Manager Plus is here, is you configure the G Suite, or you configure Office 365. G Suite isn't configured, but as soon as it is, another button will appear for Google. So with the right tool, the entire process can be solved. The entire process is this. I want to be able to take a file, basic information, and I want to be able to put that into a template. And the template is defined with the user in the file. And the template does all of the work and separates out all those differences, including Office 365. I can also do scripting inside of the template. So if I need to create other cloud-based applications, I can do that too. Most of your cloud-based applications have scripting abilities for you to create those accounts. I can do that too. But what we've done for Office 365 and Google is made it a single click so you can just have those a little bit easier. And once they're created, it actually submits a request. So instead of creating those accounts, it's a request. And now that it's a request, I can verify it. and then the account is created correctly. That's the process that I would encourage you to at least consider, because this is going to give you the power over not just AD, but also Office 365 and Google if you happen to have that. And these are just screen captures in case I didn't have the ability to connect to that. But you'll see here, there's Google Apps, Office 365, Active Directory. It's just a click away. The other thing that we do, I don't know if you notice this inside of the template, but all of the attributes that will be updated in the correct Google and/or Office 365, we indicate what those are. So now you know what's going to be created. So that's what this represents. Okay? Extremely powerful. But it changes the way that you think about things. It's changing the way that you approach the whole concept of dealing with user creation. And it has to be different because Microsoft doesn't have the tools to do that. They really don't have out-of-the-box solutions for all these things. They don't have templates. They don't have workflow. No bulk user import. PowerShell only goes so far, and it trips up pretty quickly. PowerShell doesn't have the verification. Could you script it to verify? Yes, you could. But now you have this absolute multi-tier scripting back end with commandlets in PowerShell that you have to send information back to PowerShell to create them. Extremely complex to do that. But again, the whole point is efficiency for you. That's what I want. That's what I've seen. When I show this, especially, I go to the state of Missouri in the United States every year to a conference that's all about educational institutions, kindergarten through university. It's through the University of Missouri. And when I show them the ability to do all of this, their summer work to create new users for the next school year is a button. Because they not only create new users, all they do is modify the users. They modify them to have them in different groups, and voila, they're done within 10 minutes where it used to take them multiple weeks to deal with all of these users and all the modifications and all the creations. Now it's automated because they have this automation technology. They can verify things. It's very easy to manipulate things. Okay? All right. We're going to continue on with automation, and we're going to do some cleanup in Active Directory. How many of you didn't install your current Active Directory environment, but are responsible for that Active Directory environment? Over half, okay? Now, there's a saying, junk in, right, equals junk out, but the junk that is in there now, do you have any idea what junk's in there? Not really. It's complicated. So let me walk you through some different areas on how you can actually clean up some AD, and I'll give you the reasons why we need to clean up AD in those particular areas. Computer accounts. Inactive computers. Why is this important? What happens if for some reason someone had a computer, it was part of AD for 3 years, and they just decide to unplug it and never bring it back to the environment? Could someone install a computer with that same name? Right? Can I nest a computer object in AD? Can I create an object in AD and then when I install it, it matches it? Sure I can. Why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? You're telling me I can't create a computer object and then install the computer and it now pick that up and it match it? Sure. But if nothing else, we need inactive computers to be out of AD. We need to clean them up. You're going to have auditors asking you a report of computers that haven't authenticated in a while. So how do you do that? How do you get a list of inactive computers? Well, let's try it the Microsoft way. Let's go here. Can I get a list of inactive computers? Can I get a report of inactive computers? What if I go to saved queries? Can I create a new saved query, inactive computers, go to computers, and get a listing of computers that haven't logged in a while? No, I can get disabled, but I can't get inactive. But I want to know computers that haven't engaged in Active Directory. So if we go back to our steps, right, helping secure the environment, what I need is I need a list of computers that haven't been active. In what time frame? I don't know, let's say the last 90 days. So with the right tools, I could also automate this. Every month I can get a list of computers that don't fall under the category of logging in. With these computers, what would I want to do? Maybe disable them? So if I have computers that haven't engaged in a while and I want to make sure that if for some reason they came back on the network and I haven't managed them in a while, I want to make sure they're not going to be functional. So I'm going to disable that account. So all of this can be done through automation. Right? So I can come in here and I can create policies for computers that allow me to disable the computer. It's going to automatically do that. Now, the whole point of automation is you can do multi-step automations. Because wouldn't it be great if you could leverage this report of computers that haven't been active, and based on the report, you disable the computers? Wouldn't that be ideal? Well, that's exactly what the automation does. So the automation allows you to put together automation policies, which is what's called automation. So now what I can do is I can come in here and I can do computer automations, let's say disable, based on a report. So what this does is this goes into the report of computers that haven't been active, and it's going to perform that action on them. But could disabling a computer cause some problems for you? How about if we implement workflow like we did before, where you are going to get an email saying, hey, I would like to disable these computers, and you get to verify it. Do that in PowerShell. Good luck. Is it possible? Absolutely. Anything's possible. But what I'm saying is, these are techniques and concepts that are easy to do in AD Manager because it's designed to do this. Now, disabling computers that have been inactive is one step, but possibly we need to also look at computers that have already been disabled. If we have a computer that's been disabled and hasn't been logged in a year, shouldn't we delete it? Kind of makes sense to me. So we can actually go through and look at disabled computers. Now, I can actually do this here. Right? I think I actually have a predefined. There's a disabled computer. It's part of the saved queries. But I can't do anything with this. This is just a report. What I want to be able to do is for my disabled computers, I want to do more actions with them. I want to do something else with them. I maybe want to disable them, move them to an OU. That OU has different group policy on it. Those group policies strip away the capabilities of that computer. So if that computer does come online, it can't do everything that it could normally do if it were online before. But I also want to have disabled computers be removed from the environment. Do you have time to do this? Well, obviously you do, because you're having to do it today, and you're taking these actions. You are already doing these steps. I'm just saying automate them. Instead of you having to do it once a month, take time out to do this, just automate it. If you want the automation to tell you what it's doing, just use workflow, and workflow will do everything in between. We also need to clean up user accounts. Now let's go back to when we created a user. We went in here, we created a user, and we gave the user a password. We had to create 20 users. So what was the password we used for all 20 users? What was it? Was it unique for each user? It was the same. How long have you been using that password? How many?
4 years.
4 years. How savvy are your users? Now, according to the 2 questions that came through earlier about the SID, your users are really savvy. Your users, at least these 2 asked the question, are able to use PowerShell to find out the SID for the administrator. I think that's a pretty high-end thing that an end user can do. If your users have read information into Active Directory, and you have created users with the same password for years, who can log on to these users? Who can log on to your new user accounts? I know you don't like the answer. Who can log on to new users that you create?
Who remember the first password?
Everyone, because everyone had the same starting password. Everyone. Everyone. So, how often, back to our scenario, it's Monday morning, it's 8 o'clock. You have a list of 20 users. You went into AD, you created the 20 users, all 20 users have the same password. How many of you verify that those 20 users actually get engaged? And what I mean is there's an employee that logs on, you have changed password the first time, and they've actually changed the password away from that rather than never logging on. Do you verify that? I think we have another problem. You have seeded an easy way to attack your network. Because what did you do after you created the user with the same password? What was the next step? Put them in all the groups. So if I log on as that account, even if it's a year later, what do I have access to? Every single resource that those groups have access to. See the problem? Action item. I'm going to beg. I don't care what tool you use, doesn't matter to me. I'm going to beg that you go into your Active Directory environment and you find users that have never logged on and you delete them. Please. If nothing else, disable them. Because I often get administrators say, oh, no. When I create new users, these 20, I disable all of them. Really? You do. So that when that new employee starts, you're called and you have to go in and re-enable that? I don't think you do. We have trained ourselves over the years on how to function as an admin, so it's easy for us. I was just at the break talking with someone, and they were saying that the processes that we as administrators have put in place is for our convenience. And many times these security things have fallen through the cracks because they're easy, they're convenient. It goes back to the very first thing I talked about this morning with privileges. Now watch how easy this is to get this list. Never logged on users. Okay? If I go to saved queries, new query, I don't see the list. It's not here. But by using saved queries, I can actually customize them, which is what I've done here. I put that in there. This is a custom LDAP query to get that entry. You can use AD users and computers for more than what it does. Is this a report? Kinda, right? I mean, I have to come in here and I have to click on it to get the report. Could I do that? Sure. Am I going to remember to do that? No. I want it automated. I want the process automated. I don't want to do this. I want to secure my environment because I went in and told it how to be secured. So using AD Manager, I can first of all get a report of users that have never logged on. From here, okay, I can actually reset the password. Okay? If nothing else, at least get to this part. I want you to go into AD. I want you to get a list of all your users that have never logged on, and I want you to reset the password away from the password you set at initial creation. You have to protect your environment. What I recommend is you actually go in and users that have never logged on, and again, you run this through whatever process, is you disable them, move them to a protected OU, and then you also reset the password. Use the automation capabilities to do multiple tasks. We need to create an environment that automatically in the background is securing your environment. It's cleaning things up, making sure that users can't get in as anyone. Because it is super simple for your users to dig information out of Active Directory. It is a flag for the attribute for the user. And if your users know that administrator ends in 500, then they can easily run LDAP queries using PowerShell or any other LDAP tool against AD and get the information out. I mean, if I'm a disgruntled employee, that's exactly what I would do every Monday morning. Every Monday morning when I know you're creating users, I'm going to go out and get a list of every user you created and try to get into that account. And I know some of you know this has occurred. How do I know? Because you created a user, you gave it the correct password. You know it's correct. You had to type it twice. You've typed it the same way every time for years. But when that user tries to log on for the first time, it doesn't work. Ring a bell, you get a phone call. The password doesn't work, and you're thinking, I thought for sure I typed that correctly. I don't know what happened. Possibly someone else logged on as that account. Do you know that? Do you know if someone logged on as the account? You could if you were tracking, if you were monitoring, right? If you were monitoring, you could go back in time and you could see if someone successfully logged on as that account. You would know exactly when, and you would know from which IP address. Sounds pretty cool, huh? Let me tell you, if I had these tools when I was an AD admin, I would have killed for these tools. Because I had to worry about other administrators. I went on vacations and I had other responsibilities. I had to go out of state and go to other locations, and people were doing things. And then you have to come back and you have to troubleshoot these things. But it's not just troubleshooting, it's knowing. I want to be able to go to a report in AD Audit Plus and I want to be able to see all of the logons that have occurred. So if I go to reports, I can see successful logons and logoffs. Logons based on user logon activity. So I can see within the last, let's say, 5 days, right? And now I get to go in here. You can simply add in the user's name. So you could type in the new username, and you would be able to see all the logon activity for that user. So for your new users, this would be the first thing I would do. If I created a new user and I get a phone call, the password isn't working, this is exactly what I would do. I would see if someone else logged on. Because I want to know if I typed it correctly or if someone breached the system because I put in the same password and someone's already logged on as that account. Powerful information. Gives you insight. And it all goes back, and it's not really a privileged access at this point. It's just the fact that that user that you created is a member of certain groups. And when someone else logs on, they automatically have those group memberships and they have the access. Okay? Now, the next one is expired user accounts. These are accounts that you set up an expiration and are expired and may not be used anymore. So this one gets a little bit trickier, right? I mean, inside of here, right, I have non-expiring passwords, but I really don't have expired. Could I go through? Potentially. Not every attribute can be put into this saved query interface to pull it out. But I don't want you to have to go through MSDN trying to dig up this information. You have a tool in AD Manager Plus which gives you insight into this type of information. So we're looking at recently account expired users. Right? I shouldn't have any in my environment. But you want to know this. You want to know the accounts that have expired. You need to go clean them up. Any one of these steps that I'm showing you can be automated, and the automation can do certain things to them. Right? Expired accounts. What would you want to do to expired accounts? Disable them? Reset their password, move them to a protected OU, all that's possible. You could do it every Monday. So now you are making sure that these accounts that aren't being used are cleaned up. Inactive users for a certain amount of time. Okay? You get to define the time. Similar to our computers, right? So if I go into the Microsoft way, which there is a saved query, so not logged in for. Let's go this way. New query. So users, days since last logon. Well, what if you want 45? You can't do that, sorry. You could actually possibly reverse engineer this and get the information you need. But this isn't a report that's automatically generated either. I want you to have reports that are automatically generated, and based that generation, you're going to perform actions. That's the automation piece. So if you start thinking about AD Manager as well as AD Audit, AD Manager and AD Audit help you with two different aspects, okay? Let's go back to one of the very first things that Tor talked about as well as myself, compliance. Many of you haven't had to deal with compliance yet. But for our auditor here, what do I want to provide my auditor? I want my auditor to have all of this information dumped out every week so that when the auditor needs to go get the information, it's there. Now, what if I'm doing this every week for 6 months? Well, that's approximately 25 files, correct? Wouldn't that be beneficial for you to be able to go back in history and look at all these things and compare them? Fantastic. I just made my auditor happy. That's rare. Okay? Did you do any work? Not a thing. You set up an automation to go every week and it just does it. Okay? So the outcome of here is benefiting you, it's benefiting the auditor. But Your benefit is more than just helping the auditor. Your benefit is making sure that your Active Directory environment is secure, locked down, and you know exactly what you have at all times. That's what you want to know. If we go back to the morning, all of you are raising your hand. I want to know who's in domain admins. I want to know if a service account is disabled. Well, guess what? You should want to know if all of your accounts that could be jeopardized, accounts that have never logged on, are secured. Every Monday that's secured, or every day. It's up to you. But I certainly don't think it should be once a year when the auditor comes through and finds things and tells you to go fix them. That's what's going to happen for those of you in GDPR. It's exactly what an auditor does. An auditor comes in, asks for reports, analyzes the reports, and comes back to you and says, fix it. I want you to be clean every time. You just know. You know what you have every time. It's going to help you maintain your network, and it's going to help the auditors do their job. Things are just going to go smooth. Now, inside of a tool that gives you a little bit more flexibility, we can look at reports of users that are inactive. I can have end days, I can have last month, this month, so I do have some of the basics, but I also have complete customization in case I need to go back to a particular point in time. This could help with troubleshooting. Maybe the auditor is asking for a particular report type for whatever reason. Forensics could help with that. So there are many different reasons why you have to be able to go in and dig these up. As I showed you before, very important point with AD Manager. Every report that you generate has actionable items to them. So now I can go in, based on the report, select some or all of the accounts and take actions on them. So if I want to know accounts that haven't logged on in 90 days, I can select all of these and then perform certain actions on them, all from one interface. This helps with your management, your daily management when things occur, okay? So now I can reset their password. I can do these things. If I'm not going to automate it, at least I want to be able to have a central location to do these actions. Now let's get into, well, groups. Empty groups, recursive. We've already talked about recursive. We've already talked about the whole issues around groups. Empty groups. Not really a security issue, but a little confusing at times, huh? How many have group bloat? You know what group bloat is? Group bloat is the ability for people to create groups, and you know what people do when they can create groups? They create groups. How many empty groups do you have? Do you know what an empty group can actually do? Nothing. Right? It's an empty group. I add it to a resource, no one can access it because it's empty. You often have administrators, people you've delegated group creation to. They go in, create a group, they start thinking about something else and they forget they created a group, so they go in and create another group similar to it, and they put users in that group, but they forgot about the original group. Go clean that up. This is all about cleanup of AD. Group policy. Cleaning up group policy. Who are my GPO admins? Okay. How difficult is group policy? Probably one of the most difficult parts of AD in my opinion. Okay? I mean, you guys are kind of looking at me like group policy is not complex. Come on, let's be real. Come on. I wrote the book on group policy. I know group policy is complex. Right? So here, I'm just going to pick. All right, close your eyes. I'm going to pick a GPO in your environment. This is your environment. I'm going to pick one at random. I'm going to go in and edit it. I'm going to pick a setting. Let's go to administrative templates instead. I'm going to pick a setting. right? Scroll, 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 click. And I'm going to modify that. Now I want you to discover what I said. How difficult is group policy? Adds a little bit different light to it, doesn't it? I've always said for years, group policy is kind of like, I don't know if you ever had this game show when you were growing up called Name That Tune. I can name that tune in one note. Remember that? I can destroy your Active Directory environment with one GPO setting. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty complex. So we need to make sure that our group policy is tight. We need to make sure that group policy is cleaned up and that we know what's going on with group policy. So ideally, what I want is first of all, the ability to go in and with reports, come down to group policy and look at my unused GPOs. I want to go in and look at GPOs that really aren't being used. If they're not being used, let's get rid of them. Okay? If they're not linked anywhere. Do you know what an unlinked GPO will do? Nothing. It's just sitting there. It's an object that's sitting there. What's a problem with that? If I have a GPO that has 200 settings in it, and today it's not linked to anything, what is the potential problem with that? Someone could link it. How long does it take for that linked GPO to start doing damage if it's going to do damage? Boom, right? Because I'm just going to go and link it to your domain. Not to an OU, I'm just going to right to the domain. Okay? So go clean up your group policy environment. Some other tips around group policy. Okay. With group policy, action items. If you haven't done this, action items. Go to the Group Policy Management Console, right-click, and back up all. If you haven't done this, if you're not doing this, go do it. Back up your GPOs. Okay? If I delete a GPO, how are you going to recover today? Okay? Second, I want you to go to every single GPO, right-click on it, and save report. If you haven't done this, go do it. Okay? If you haven't done this, I want you to go into group policy and do this. What this will do is give you the ability to restore if something bad goes on, and if there's a setting that's changed, you can go to the report and look at any of the old settings and change it back.
It's a good PowerShell command to export all GPOs.
Okay, so the comment is there's a good PowerShell command. There's VB and PowerShell. Fantastic. Actually script it, schedule it, do it every day. Okay? Every single day. Whether it be PowerShell, whether it be VB, I don't care what it is, back them up. But if you have never backed them up at least once. All right? Finally, we need to talk about delegations. Go clean up your delegations. What are delegations? Delegations are when someone goes into Active Directory users and computers, they go down to a particular OU, they go to, wrong button, they go to the delegation wizard and they delegate. How difficult is this to track and monitor? Okay. We're going to end on this, and I'm going to ask you all to do this when you get back. You are going to go clean up your delegations. And then you're going to automate telling you when they change. The way that you clean up your delegations is use a built-in tool called DS-ACLs. If you've never heard of DS-ACLs, well, you're going to go back and you're going to deal with it. It stands for Directory Service Access Control List. The idea is that you put in the OU and LDAP syntax. OU equals HR, comma, DC equals AD solutions, comma, DC equals demo. And it pumps out for you the actual current ACL for that OU. You evaluate it. I really don't believe that finance managers should have the ability to reset passwords for HR employees. So you go clean it up. Then what you do is you go to AD Audit Plus, and in AD Audit Plus, you set up alerts such that if an OU ACL changes, you get an email. Pretty awesome stuff. Okay? I've actually written a couple of blogs that walk you through how to efficiently clean up OU ACLs. Because actually you can create a batch file. The batch file can create everything quickly. You can go through and scan it. It's actually pretty efficient. It's probably an hour to 2 hours worth of work depending on how many OUs you have. But it's needed. You have to clean that up. Okay? So in our last 2 sessions, we talked about automation. We talked about automation for user creation, making sure that we are getting our users into AD correct and secure every single time. But we get to verify. So I walked you through that entire process with bulk user import, templates, CSVs, workflow, everything. A couple of clicks, you can get Office 365 and Google. Then we talked about cleaning up AD. You can see how AD Manager Plus with automation can clean up a lot of different things. I'm sure that some of you have even done even more with it with AD cleanup. I just kind of gave you some seed ideas, okay? So it is the end of our time. I think we do have some wraps. Do you want to come up and say anything, Marcus or Tor?
Thank you very much, Derek. Give an applause, I think. Yes.